Hey, Inga, thumbs up on the audio. Excellent. I'll be right back.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Have a good weekend.
Uh, yeah. I'm hesitating because um, I thought I had finished something yesterday about midday. That stuff I sent to you yesterday or this morning rather,
Mm.
um, and I just got distracted and hit the wrong button and wiped it all out.
Oh no.
So,
Oh, that's
yesterday was a
horrible.
scramble of okay, because quite frankly, I had to take Friday off. Thursday just wiped me out.
I took Friday off
Uh,
as well.
so I worked on it most of the day Saturday and just uh, made that stupid mistake yesterday, and that was pretty upsetting.
Hmm.
But it's getting better. Um, I hope you got the document. I just tried to build on what was available from last Thursday.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. So I guess the lesson I learned from yesterday is I better get my backup disk functional again.
Yeah. There's a dog next door. Um, so there is possibly a way that you can do that. At least go back to the previous save document without having to recreate everything, but it's iffy.
Yeah, I tried it a couple of different ways, and I went back to the last one I could find and just tried to recreate.
Okay.
Looks like Jeff has made it.
Yeah, just waiting for Mark. Sam said he was going to be a little late. He's on another meeting.
Good afternoon, everybody.
No.
Good afternoon. I can shoot a text over to Mark. Did I don't recall. Did he say he was going to be a bit late?
He didn't send anything to me.
I'm getting confused with different meetings.
Last week he said he was going to be late.
That's what it was.
One ray of sunshine through the cloud.
Yes.
Well, I guess we can, Ed, since you've been doing a lot of the writing, are you interested in writing the conclusion for this is for the work group portion. It'll go under the findings and recommendations. We need a conclusion. We have the introduction. You wrote the introduction. And we're also going to need a conclusion. If you and Jeff want to write one separately or together, that would work well.
I'm happy to start the writing, but I think it should be a collaboration. You know, I can if some of the other groups have already done a conclusion, I can try to mimic the style.
I don't think anyone has.
Okay, so then that makes it easier. What were you thinking the conclusion was going to be like? Because I'm thinking the findings and the recommendations are kind of like the end point, the conclusion, but
Probably that's a question for Sam, actually. I'm sure he's got a good idea of what he wants to see in the conclusion. I know he's mentioned it to us, but it was a couple of meetings ago and I don't remember what he wanted.
yeah, and I just need to kind of line it out because obviously I want to get Catherine and Mark to go through it.
Yeah, I can
treat it
share
like
the latest draft that he sent on the work plan.
I don't see the conclusion listed anywhere. This is how bad things have gotten. I've got the schedule up on my wall. I keep forgetting where I am.
So this is the latest work plan that I guess they worked on it last week. Sam and Darren, perhaps, and Greg on Friday. And then we looked at it again today.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if he's decided this is finalized or it's still going to get massaged. So this is today, the 27th. And then so we're going to refine and then meet again next week to do the same thing. And draft 5, so we kind of skipped draft 4. Draft 4 was what came out for last work group meeting, which was just the findings and recommendations. So we skipped the draft 4 whole, the entire document with appendices. And then looks like draft 5 is also going to be without appendices too. So the appendices are the subcommittee reports that we worked on. So draft 5 is just going to be, again, probably the findings and recommendations, the introductions, and I'm guessing the conclusions will be needed for draft 5. Again, we can make sure, double check with Sam, but he'll probably want a conclusion for draft 5. And that's the 15th of March, needs to go out.
That's doable.
Okay. And then we have our work group meeting on the 16th. And they're proposing another work group meeting on the 23rd. This is a new one that they're proposing.
Okay.
And draft 6 is going to supposedly come out. So we're going to do draft 5, then they're going to open the public survey, and then draft 6 with the appendices. So the entire thing on the 20th. And then they're going to open up the work group poll and then have another meeting on the 23rd. And I think that's, oh, so then we have the next week if we need to have another subcommittee meeting, which I'm not on the appendix only. I'm not sure. Not sure what that is about. And then we're going to finalize the report on April 3rd. And then have the coffee table version available for, I thought he pushed that out to the 18th. But it says the 11th on here, so. That's what we talked about this morning.
Okay.
So our final revisions, basically the 13th of March is when we need to have everything finalized, it looks like, with the possibility of clarifying items on just the appendix, which is our subcommittee report on the 27th.
Okay. Obviously, it's appreciated as soon as it's releasable if you get it out to us.
Yep. So we're not going to have a meeting. It looks like we're not going to have a subcommittee meeting on the 20th. I think it's on our schedule, but on here, no subcommittee meetings the week of the 20th.
Okay.
Inga, just to double check, that's March 20th. We're canceling that March 20 meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. I was just, if this were on a Google schedule, would just make it a whole lot easier to import it into our calendars so we could keep things straight. but it looks like it's in a Word document.
Yes,
All
looks
right.
like Sam's coming on, so this is his document, so you can make that comment to him.
So are we talking about this new schedule?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And yeah, I asked about if Jeff and Ed wanted to write the conclusions, and when that would be needed. I'm guessing you would want that for draft. Well, yeah, draft 5, right? Because it's going to go into the work group document.
Right. So any conclusion, basically, we are done for all intents and purposes on the 15th of March, because any changes that happen are likely only to be to the findings and recommendations, because that's what we're going to be talking about at this work group meeting on the 16th. We will, continue to refine them, but the actual voting happens on the 23rd here. So I don't know how much explanation or context you were able to talk about this to frame it up. So
Yeah, we went through it. Go ahead,
okay.
though.
No, I don't have a desire to go through it if you've already gone through it.
The only comment I had was if it were available in, say, a Google Calendar or something where we can just import it so we can all keep up to date on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I can do that. I'm still landing the plane on this. I just got, the reason I was late, I was talking to the public information officers teams about getting out notices and all of this stuff, but we can, create Google calendars, for these things once we land the plane. That's a good idea.
And
Anything else next on the list? Because
was there any kind of outline you were thinking of the conclusion or format?
no is the short answer. I mean, it's, other than the usual, it's, here's what we told you we were going to talk about in the introduction. And, here we delivered it in the body, and now we're just wrapping up. I don't know, because the findings and recommendations really are the thrust of the substantive conclusions.
Mhm.
So I don't know that it is a big substantive lift. Now, but I leave it, to your discretion and judgment. As to what it's going to say. And with that said, Inga, I'm sorry, could you go back to the draft calendar here?
Where'd it go? Where'd it go? No.
What might help with this discussion about the conclusion is this thought that came out of Thursday's work group meeting and the various drafts this document on the screen went through over the weekend. So you'll see on the 23rd, it says final work group meeting and formal polling, and there's an asterisk in green. That asterisk, I'll let you just read that green that's next to it in the 24th, 25th box, and then I'll engage you in a more specific conversation.
Got it.
So this has been talked about in its various evolving formats. But I honestly don't remember what folks I've talked to about it at what point of the evolution. This was designed to basically say, there's the there's the 100 pages, which is the body of the report. And then there's the 350-page appendix, 150 of which is your stuff and other people's stuff. One of the comments we received from, I think it was Debbie Palmer on Thursday night was, are you going to read to the work group, basically saying, be careful, you're going to be asked to approve the entire report, and it's 450 pages. And, are you agreeing with everything in that report? This is to make clear the intent is really the report is the so-called 100 pages. And those will be the findings and recommendations with the surrounding context that goes in the body of the work group report. And that is what will be pulled upon. The appendix is there, and we'll still do hyperlinks from findings and recommendations to the appendix itself, but it of itself is not a formal part of the findings and recommendations. Now, you will have approved it, that each subcommittee will approve that, yes, the appendix that represents our subcommittee's work is an accurate reflection of what we discussed, and the background for the findings and recommendations. It's there more as a resource, but it is not if you will, a formal part of the report in the sense that, what people are really going to be able to focus on is the first 100 pages. And so I want to pause and see if that makes sense or is it's nonsense, or if we can improve that global approach, because then that affects what goes in your introduction, conclusion, and then what context goes in the findings and recommendations to flesh it out. So to be clear, Inga, if you could go up to today so they can see that. Go to the top of this document. So as you see here, the subtle distinction here is 27, 28, and March 1st. It's focused on refining findings and recommendations. Okay, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and 13 and 14 is focused on everything, which would include the appendix.
Can we go back to this appendix thing?
Yep.
And I'm trying to anticipate and avoid an issue about people being heard. The appendix is where, at least in the cup conditions piece, we included all the comments of the work group as it evolved, as the subcommittee evolved. So, at one time we had just the work group, and you had some people that are no longer there. They put in comments. We put those and left them in the material. I believe there was a great deal of commentary from others, like Mark, that got included in the dialogue. then we drove it to, you know, getting things in categories. If this appendix gets positioned as, gee, it doesn't count, it's nice to have, but it doesn't count. It's almost like disenfranchising a whole bunch of folks that are putting time and effort to come to, you know, civil inputs. Is there something else you can do to say in the 100-pager that you're not producing it, but or it'll be available? Some way not to cut these folks off?
So there's no desire to cut them off. So the only issue is how do we alert the readers to the existence of this important commentary and back and forth without summarizing it in the body of the work group report, which I believe, thinking out loud only, is too much detail for almost most people to incorporate. And so I think one way of doing it, again, simply thinking out loud, is to have a finding and or a recommendation that says in your CUP document that each of the conditions for past CUPs was vetted in depth by the CUP subcommittee, and it includes comments and you know, the dialogue back and forth between past and current subcommittee members. And we encourage you to read it, especially if you have a concern or issue or are just simply interested in any of the compliance workup. Does that help towards that balance, or is it not enough? Or
I think that's in the right direction. Catherine, how are you reacting?
Well, as always, I agree with, not as always I agree with you, but in this case, I agree with you always, and that it's important that we recognize the time and effort that folks have put into bringing their perspectives and comments to this body of work. So with respect to what you said, I definitely agree with, how do we not disenfranchise those that participated but may not find their contents in this final work product? And to the point of why that may or may not be important, depending on who you are, I found it very helpful with the 8307 land use documents that we had additional context. So for those readers that might want to find it, capturing it here seems relevant. I like Sam's idea. I think that's a great, you know, first run at how we incorporate a finding and a recommendation. And I do think it gives recognition to that other bit of context that some folks might want, right? Obviously, not everyone's going to want that, but if somebody wants to know more about folks that were part of this process and opinions and a record that exists through this process, it's a good way to do it, is it to land in that findings and recommendations, which is probably going to be, if you were only going to pick one or two spaces to look at all of this work, the findings and recommendations components are going to be probably priority places. So we can tie folks to it through some sort of worded finding and recommendation.
Sam, you're still expecting that we're going to link the findings to the appendix body, correct?
yes.
Yeah.
And so part of that finding and rec, and probably just needs to go into the introduction or how to read this section portion of the report that tells them that, for each finding and recommendation, it's hyperlinked to the appendix so that people can get more information. But, another way to do it as a finding and or rec is, to say to the reader very overtly, and I don't know if this is an overstatement, but for many, if not most, of the discussion surrounding the condition compliance of the X number of conditions, where there was a robust discussion for which there was no consensus reached. As a result, that information and the back and forth appears there, fear-based information. I mean, just be very overt about it.
Can we combine your two suggestions? Like the
Yeah.
language is there. And just curious, because I have less of a grasp, it's not in front of me, of this final document, how it's all going to interconnect. The link we would attach to this finding and or recommendation would be
Probably to those two charts, or however many charts there are. The second one of the two. The first one is just kind of a summary of all of them, and then the analysis is in the charter table below it. So I would connect that to the second one.
I guess that would be the, making sure that what we put in the language for a finding or recommendation ties very clearly, right? It introduces you to what you're going to find at that link. Just making sure that they align would be.
Yep.
And Ed, back to you then, do you find that points us in the right direction?
Yeah.
Through a mechanism that's already going to be existing in this work product?
I think we can make it work. I think that's good.
Okay.
And I would really suggest you emphasize the degree of dissonance that exists in table 2. So people, put a flashing light on it, that, there is dissonance there between the public members, Republic and the county. And, it's 150 pages. So it's going to be, we can't possibly, summarize it into a finding other than the major themes that we looked at them. There was dissonance, and the details of that back and forth appear hyperlink table 2.
I think that this one might be important to take to Mark also. What kind of language?
Yeah, absolutely. Take the language. For what it's worth, I was able to connect with him last night because I knew he probably wasn't going to be able to be on this call. The rat bastard is skiing in Eastern Washington, and he better bring back presents for us like Ed and Jeff did.
Snow.
Yeah, snowballs, snow cones, probably. Snow cones, get a choice of flavor. And he wanted to talk to you, but he's generally aware of the concept that we are just discussing, but did not agree to anything. He was simply, I just want to give him a heads up. So if you guys did talk to him this week in between his après-ski drinking, you can, he'll already know something about it.
Kind of remember now that he was going to go skiing. That's why I was babbling about it earlier, Inga. I thought he was there. I annoyed him with a text asking where he is.
Yeah, good. That we should encourage that. In fact, every hour from now until he comes back, we should take turns texting him.
15 minutes.
Every 15 minutes. Where are you now? Where are you now?
Okay, I think we that's good. I think we're headed. Yeah, we'll definitely get marking on that.
Jeff Condon, what do you think of this evolving idea here for the treatment?
No, I think it's a good idea. I agree. We don't want to lose sight of all the input and arguments that we've had. And so I think that's a good way to solve the issue.
Disagreement.
Disagreements.
Yes.
Disagreements. We've never
Discourse,
been disagreeable. We've had disagreements.
civil discourse.
Right.
One thing I have a question in the DEQ stuff, I have not been able to get to it. Can we just put it as a informational appendix in the appendix?
Yeah, it's not, if you, yeah, I think, look at, that's totally understandable and reasonable. We didn't get it. I don't even know if we have all of it yet. Do we have all? We don't have all of it yet, do we, Ed?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just have to say, and that could be a finding or a recommendation again that said that says that, we got some of the information. We didn't have time to analyze all of the stuff we even got, and there's more out there. And here's how you get it. Here's what you do. You contact Audrey O'Brien at 1-800-PUBLIC-INFO. And
well, Inga's, I didn't get a chance to download it, but Audrey has already provided stuff, and we just need to get it. It didn't get captured and put on my computer, and I guess it didn't get captured and put on the county. So we need to get her to resend it and set that up as a public file.
that makes sense. And then you can link to it, in the finding or recommendation. So it'll be on the website. So people don't have to go do as much searching as you all had to do.
Okie doke. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then the final thing I'll say before you guys dive in is that, one of the things that became clear on Thursday night by separating out the naked findings and recommendations is that, they don't have all of the context that's necessary, to do that. And I think you all did a good job of providing some of that when CUP findings and recommendations came up. But the next week, after we get the core findings and recommendations set up, it is now time to go back to what we had previously, which was about a 25-page subcommittee portion of the full work group report that provided the context, like your introduction that you've all agreed to, how to read this document, what was the charge, who are the members of the subcommittee, and all that needs to be then integrated for your work that goes into the body of the full work group report. And yes, it will be duplicative of what's in the appendix, but that will be the step to get draft 5 done.
Okay. I'm just writing down, we'll need a 25-page or less condensation of the 150 pages
Right,
or 100, whatever they are now.
right. And these findings and recs will be part thereof.
Okay. Got it.
So I'm gonna accept any changes that we agreed on today in this document. And some of this, it looks like you just changed just capitalize some things. So
Yeah.
those would be, I'm just gonna accept those, except that one. Um, 13, I don't think anyone has any issues with that you reviewed 13 land use decisions and 85 associated conditions.
I didn't do the math, but I trust Ed did.
Yep.
He had to take off his shoes and socks for this, but he did in fact get the right number.
All right, S3. Maintain reports. The applicant to maintain them.
Okay by me.
Me too. Catherine.
I think she said she's fine. Oh, she's getting her thing on.
Sorry, I was just reviewing it quick, so almost there. Right. That should be fine. Okay, nope, actually, I'm just gonna ask it. I don't know that it needs to be. The word generally, so is every report that is required, is it required to go to the county? And is it maintained by the county? So DEQ is that space where there's compliance that's happening in that space. Does the county actually receive copies of all of that and maintain that? So the word generally comes to mind. Reports are generally required. That's just what I'm wondering. Meaning reports are required is very specific.
Yeah, they're written in the conditions.
So it's actually
So
the
maybe
sentence.
it's a
Go ahead.
clarification of which reports then. So condition of approval reports are required.
No, it was like to say example monitoring records.
Right. So when I look at this, meaning we're just starting at F3. So any context that was built around getting to F3, I'm not looking at it right now and intuitively coming to that. So which reports are required? And if it's the broader reports, including DEQ reporting, I'm not trying to complicate it. I'm just trying to make sure that we cover our bases, I guess.
Well, if it's just the conditions of approval that we're referring to, then I think it was just the DEQ reports that were required in all of the cups.
If everybody else is fine with it, I won't worry about it. To me, it doesn't lead necessarily to the spaces we would need to be certain of which reports we're talking about, or if we're talking of all of them, is it all of them? But if we want to leave this as a committee whole, I'm fine.
Well, let's just try to nail it, because what happens here, this is a great example of F3. So the last time the findings and recommendations went out, I made a note in my transmittal email that I have this program called Grammarly. And what it does is it goes through, it's like a very sophisticated spell check, grammar check. And what it will do with F3 as currently written, it will pop up on my screen and say, reorganize sentence. And I suspect the sentence will say that they suggest the required DEQ reports are submitted by the applicant and maintained by the county. And then the nuance here that we're adding, I think, is the required DEQ reports are submitted by the applicant and maintained by the county.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Me too.
You know, I struggle between correcting people, my desire to correct people's grammar and my desire to have friends. And they're just in conflict. I mean,
Wordsmithing is a painful process, to be sure. That's better. I like that better.
Actually, Sam, I think you wrote this one.
And
Probably.
I'm going to toss this one in there too, because I know Ed has looked at some of these. So a review of these county required submittals was not conducted. I would say a full review, because I know we poked at some of this, but by no means is it all of it.
All right, let's accept F3. I think we have a consensus. This is just a capitalization issue, right?
Yep.
I think we
took
should,
out for the landfill. I just made it broader.
I think we should have a whole separate meeting on F6 to accept this change.
So wait, we're on F, are we not? Oh, so F4 has a capitalized applicant too. That shouldn't be.
I think Ed capitalized applicant, didn't you not?
Yeah.
So we would not, matter of fact, would conditions of approval be capitalized officially? I don't know. So that's a funny one, but applicant, I don't think would be.
Unless
on-
you define the term above.
Above.
If you define the term above, applicant means like republic or whatever that other entity is. If you defined it, and this is the shorthand. I suggest we just leave that capitalization as it is. And if we have time to go back and see what Sister Mary Fenton and Sister Mary Elephant would do with this, who taught me English in 8th grade, then we can have that conversation later. I can
I'm
get
good.
them on the phone.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Disregard my comment.
Makes sense, right? F10.
Yep.
That thing where it says material above is from page 20. That was just to keep me on track of where I was getting things from.
No problem. We can take that out. We
Yep.
believe you.
So on F10, Benton County has issued land use approvals before the applicant was granted necessary operating permits from multiple state agencies.
Period. The county advised.
Right. Do we want, so those land use approvals were with conditions? Meaning if it required operating permits, that would have been a condition of approval. Do we want to nod to conditions of approval anywhere in F10 is my question.
So you're saying something like issued land use approvals containing conditions of approval before the, I'm not sure what you're trying to say.
Maybe, yes, maybe that's the space that seems like it fits, but it seems important to call out. Like we wouldn't have the authority in Benton County to issue approvals without certain conditions that required some of these permits, for example. So do we want to, for the less familiar with the process reader, point to conditions of approval by name? And that seems the right place to me, assuming that we want to do that.
So it's more of an educational thing to just.
It's just helpful keeping it between the lanes. So,
Yeah.
so one doesn't wander too far out, or that repetitive reinforcement of understanding.
I'm fine.
And then Inga, the word advised needs to catch up with the word county. No, below the page break, right below page break.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
that needs to catch up with the word county.
Yeah, I think it'll do that when I accept the
Oh.
changes.
got it, sorry.
I don't think the possible exception of the EQ, I think it should be with the exception of the EQ permits, because we can't proceed until we get the EQ permits. Yeah.
The XX one is just a recognition that we looked at the regional landfill documents, the 74 documents, because we didn't reference it anywhere else in the conclusions or the findings. So it needed to be somewhere. And I tried to convey what the status was and where to go get more information.
So this, presumably, this finding would answer the recurring question of how did we get from that 1974, 10 areas, 3 counties, waste shed to where we are today, right? This is intended to kind of address that, is how I'm reading it. Is that a fair assessment, Ed? I like that you have it here.
Well, it's two things. One, that people aren't crazy. At one time, there really was a limitation, and things changed. And there no longer is a limitation.
Sam, I'm going to throw a Grammarly at this since you threw Grammarly out there. So where we start with the sentence, legal precedents established, could we start that sentence with in 1988, legal precedents were established that are believed to have superseded, meaning it leads stronger with that date? That's not necessary, but is that better?
I think you would say starting in 1988, legal precedents were established. No, I say legal precedents. What is going on here? And starting in 1988, legal precedents. I think you can take out as legal were established. You don't need to. Those are redundant words there. So it'd just be 1988 legal precedents are believed to have superseded the 74 requirements.
Jeff, you're okay?
I'm fine with that.
Hey, everybody, just jumping in.
Oh,
Sorry to be late.
Oh, he came off the slopes.
I wasn't on the slopes, except unless you want to call the slopes of the side of the road.
Oh, an adventure.
But I didn't do that either. What's the significance of 1988? Is that the Supreme Court date?
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was later than that, but okay, that's cool.
I think, Mark, I think you're right. I think it was 98, but we can go back and double check that.
Okay, yeah, I don't think it was 88. It seems like it was, but we should verify it.
Yep.
And could we also, at the end of that, have superseded, are believed to have superseded the 1974 requirements, expanding the whatever to whatever, right? So we talk about how many counties it is now. So can we nod to how, like, I wouldn't know that unless I knew where to look for how many counties now and what our waste shed looks like now. No, not limiting, expanding.
Well, superseded the 1974 requirements, limited.
So in 98, the legal precedents are believed to have superseded the 1974 requirements, expanding the waste shed, if that's the right way, to what? How many counties?
I think you probably stated as a fact that currently the county served number blank blank.
So a separate sentence.
Yeah. Whereas I don't think that legal precedent expanded the counties. It just said,
Oh, allowing, how about allowing for the expansion of the waste shed? Is that better? Or removing the limits of the waste shed is the other way to maybe look at that. Sorry, Inga.
I don't think we've used waste shed anywhere else, have we?
Mm-mm.
I have
In
only heard it. We don't have to use it here.
in other subcommittees, I don't know which one. I think that we have settled on service area. I think that was in the capacity subcommittee.
that
We're now
sounds right.
using the word service area.
And then I would add beyond the original 4, allowing for the expansion of the service area beyond the original. Were there 4 counties back then?
3.
3, yeah, beyond the original 3 counties. To the current X counties. So you don't need a new sentence, just.
I think that it's fine without the 2 of the current X counties, because what it did is it allows the expansion area beyond the original 3 counties, but it doesn't, the decision
Yeah.
didn't allow specific counties to be.
That's right. And it didn't allow specific numbers. It just said whatever. So I think it's right the way it is now.
Or it could also say currently Coffin Butte serves X number of counties.
As a separate sentence,
As a
right?
As a
After,
separate
Yes.
sentence. Yeah, as a separate sentence.
that's just a fact. So I think that's
Yeah.
straightforward.
Makes sense.
I don't know what the
4,
actual,
5.
no,
Okay.
no, talk 25 counties. It's
Yeah.
20 to 25 counties, something like that. If you want, I can look up the most recent annual report. Or we can save that for later. We don't need to spend the time doing that now.
Why don't you put for X counties for now, and highlight the X so we know we have to fill it in.
This one's a tough one.
So without getting into the substance of it, I think this is a perfect example of drawing the reader's attention to those, the back and forth in the comments done that we talked about at the beginning of this call, or at the beginning when I hopped on with the call. This is a great example of not hiding anything and saying, here's where you find this stuff. But we don't need to repeat. Mark said, Inga said, Catherine said, ... Here, we simply refer them to where they're found. So let's get, Jeff, what are your thoughts on the substance here?
I'm actually fine with it.
What? I want you to object because I get paid by the hour and I want to continue this project tonight.
Well, thanks for
not.
reminding me, Sam. I get paid by the hour too. Let's
Yeah,
talk
what-
about this one.
What the hell are you doing? Ha ha. This is lawyer humor, attempted lawyer humor. Emphasis
Not
on the
funny,
word
gentlemen, not funny.
emphasis on the word attempted. With a finding from Catherine that it was not even an
Not
attempt at humor.
funny.
Yeah. And her recommendation is that we stop. So
Strike,
good.
strike that from the minutes.
Yeah, you should outline or yellow that consolidate Jaeger's December work. I didn't get a chance to do that. But I think Mark has sent it to everybody.
Jeff was going to put his response within that document. So
Yeah, and
I'm still waiting for
I apologize. I have not been able to get to that, but I will do that this week.
Well, then we should, that should be just put in the the legal subcommittee can refer to it. I wouldn't get into a debate in this package.
Right.
You could say the legal, if you want to say the legal subcommittee disagrees, the position, Bob, I think that's okay, but let's not explode this paragraph to too big.
All right. All right, our friend F12.
I left the pendings in on everything. I didn't change that. Just because that was a marker for me that the paragraph had been discussed at least once.
Right, makes sense.
So for F12, are we putting a link to that MOU and also to those? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. Okay, lots of strike through and it's not super big, so that works.
I'm fine with it.
And is issue the right word at the end of this? That's just a question.
I would say are potentially impacted, period.
Yeah, shorten it up is better.
I like that.
And I think the next one was primarily last week, and Jeff, you had, I think, done the majority of this. Maybe you just did the first 3 lines. The rest reads like me.
And we all agree that we should find a way to cut this down. It's just way deep in the weeds. Seems to me.
Can we just get rid of everything after the first sentence or second sentence?
So we did talk
Before
about
examples?
at one of our previous meetings, providing examples. And I thought Sam also was part of that conversation in support of that. I would just say, is there a way to, because this does help, again, an uninitiated reader who is less familiar with DEQ environmental requirements or land use in particular, which can be, it's just one of those things that are hard for folks to really get a broad understanding of. So can we still include some examples? So when we talk about groundwater contamination, or we talk about buffers, or is there a way to just bring this into a more, I do not support removing the examples. I'd like to see them more consolidated. How about that?
We can make them more, I think we can make them shorter.
So
Well, let me just, for what it's worth, I mean, I think while laudable to make it shorter, the really question is if everyone agrees we're going to have examples, I wouldn't worry about making it shorter now. I would go through the rest of these findings and get fidelity. And then that kind of, if you will, stylistic editing can be done next week. So I want to press you to guys get through your list of findings and recs here.
Could you get rid of pending at F13?
Yeah, that's fine for me. It looks better now that it's been, all the strikeouts are gone. It's still long, but it looks better. And I support leaving examples in.
Jeff, are you okay with those examples in?
Yeah, I might quibble with some of them, but that's fine.
Okay.
Not
14.
always.
So can you put those back for a second, maybe, please?
There's another situation where I made it bigger by giving information.
My only comment that is I don't know if your numbers on how much gallons of leachate is trucked off to the site are accurate. I'd have to check with Ian McNabb.
I can verify that for you, Jeff. Last year, the water year of 2021 was 32 million gallons. It ranges between 23 and 32, depending how wet it is. I think 32 or 33 is the highest we've seen. But yeah, check with Ian.
Okay, no, if that's accurate, I'm fine with it. I just want to confirm that it's accurate.
Yeah, it is accurate. And the 20 trucks per day, I think we assumed 5,500 gallons per truck, 6 days a week, something like that.
So put that assumption in there.
I can redo the math. Do you remember, Ed, exactly what I did there?
I've got the table, I can pull it up. That's
Okay.
5,500.
Yeah, 5,500 gallons per truck.
That's helpful. We have stricken the public burden phrasing here. I think as a matter of finding, the reality is there is an impact to our publicly funded infrastructures. How do we capture that in this finding?
I could move to a recommendation.
So we don't want it in a finding that there is a public impact, public infrastructure impact, if we don't want to use the phrase public burden. Meaning the question through this finding, the question that we're leaning into is what, for all practical purposes, what is that public burden, whether it's on the river, whether it's on the roads, whether it's on the actual wastewater systems. And we're not teeing up that recommendation well, if that's the question we're asking here.
Well, here is my overall sense of this in the moment, thinking out loud. I get the argument that leachate going from point A to point B is a public burden. There's also a public benefit, one could argue, because it is getting treated and not treated on site and left there. And all that is an argument for the Planning Commission to weigh to what extent, if any, of the various ways to process, treat, move leachate, advantages and disadvantages or create burdens. So you're just stating a fact, this is what's happening with leachate, that it makes sense. Then your recommendation should because there's more of these in here about public burdens, aren't there?
Yep.
Or that you want to treat all the same, and then the ultimate determination as to whether or not they are a burden, again, is not for us to decide. We specifically say that we're not commenting on the merits. The charter says we're not commenting on the merits of their CUP.
Mhm.
So in the recommendation, would we be able to phrase somehow a recommendation to the evaluation of the public burden versus the public benefit of
Yeah, I
F14's findings, for example?
Yeah, I think it's in there. You might have to search leachate, but
Oh,
we
hold
did
it right
consider
there.
that.
Number 10. We can get to that later, but it should be
Mhm.
evaluate rather than consider, seems to me,
Right.
but we're not there yet.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that.
But that's the language, kind of language you're looking for, Catherine, right?
Well, and I think that runs, meaning it's just making sure that we do capture, I think that was one of our concerns, is what is that impact? What is it actually costing? You know, we obviously Corvallis wastewater is getting compensated, but are we considering, you know, the impact of the streets themselves, or impacts that might occur to the neighborhoods on those streets, or any number of other factors? So I think it's good where we're at. And Sam, I appreciate how you kind of carried that language, and I see it now in that recommendation.
So tell me why 16 is going
So we're at 15.
away.
We're at 15.
Yeah, but that's so easy. I mean, why are you taking out the back and forth that last week you wanted me to put in? I'm not arguing it. I'm just saying, I just want to make sure it wasn't inadvertent, because there was strong sentiment that I put in that parenthetical.
Which one are you? I'm not
15,
doing.
15.
No.
So would that be a recommendation in the
We'll leave it
recommendation
in there.
language?
I thought I captured it later on, but I don't have any problem with it.
Well, if you've moved it to a recommendation, I mean, that's where this language, I think, belongs, if you can agree on it.
I think that's where I moved it to, but we should just check. I've looked at this too long.
Right. There it is.
It's up.
It's up there. You had it, right? It looks like it's 8. No.
It's.
I thought I saw it flash on the
a little
screen.
higher.
Yeah, right there, isn't it? 6. Okay. Yep. So that's fine. I just don't want you to miss something, given how much we talked about last week. Okay, and then what are we doing here? Is this changed to a recommendation now? Is that what you did here too?
Yeah. You should go check it again to make sure I didn't screw up. But there should be a
There it is, 11.
yeah. Yep. What I was having trouble with was getting the finding and the recommendation, because they're separated by pages, just making sure there's a one-to-one correspondence.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we wouldn't, if you delete this, we won't have a finding for that recommendation.
Say that again, please.
We won't have a finding to refer back to for that recommendation.
So we want to restate this as a, try to restate this as a finding.
Yeah,
So
So it would just say-
determine whether the public burden, determine whether the, oh, no.
Oh, it's a
No,
finding.
it's
It's a
unclear.
finding.
You
It is
just start with
unclear.
the word, the acquisition of buffer land is the finding.
Right. That is consistent as the recommendation part of it, so that goes away. It would probably be the acquisition of buffer land is a condition of DEQ's corrective measures for the landfill. The acquisition of buffer land by landfill-related entities is a condition of DEQ's corrective measures for the landfill.
should we just say Republic?
Well, no, because that's one of the things, I believe it's Russ is the name, Jeff, from the Republic organization. He was very clear, or maybe it was Ginger, that it's not Republic that owns the land. It's Valley.
Yeah, it's Valley
Land.
landfills.
So I think it's just one of those. That's why I just put in landfill related entities, just because it's so muddy and murky. It was a can of worms I didn't want to open.
I agree with Ed, because we don't know now whether or not Republic might be acquiring land, or it may not always be Valley landfills. So,
And the landfill related entities was something that showed up in a, I think it was one of the legal documents that what I believe was.
wait, don't get rid of that yet, please. Looks like she was getting ready to accept all the changes. I'm just wondering whether or not we want to continue to put something here to tie it to, and it may have to be, so we now say the acquisition of buffer land by landfill related entities is, and then parenthetical, may be inconsistent with Vision 240. Something to tie it to that, so that there's, when we get to the recommendation, that we're looking at, how are we, what's the value base that we're trying to evaluate this against? And I think the Vision 2040, I said 240 before, but so just a thought about whether or not we want to keep that as part of this finding.
Well, if we keep that, then I'd like to have I'd like to leave the Republic note in there too, because I don't think ownership of property can violate a land use planning document. Because you can't regulate the ownership of property.
No, I don't think this is saying that at all. It's just acknowledging that DEQ's saying go buy land. And I think it doesn't say go buy land. It accepts it as a remedy. It's very nuanced language, but the effect is you're buying land to prevent people from being exposed to contaminated groundwater.
So there's still a disconnect between the acquisition of buffer land and then the consistent with Vision 2040 part of this. And I do think it's important to draw that into the narrative somehow here.
It's in the finding. This is just a statement of fact. But I think if you add the 2040 thing in there, then whoops, not sure what that happened. I think if you add 2040 in there, then you're adding something in that no one has looked at, or then that becomes the recommendation. It's not a statement of fact that you have looked at this in regard to 2040.
So
Okay,
there's maybe, is that what we're trying to capture, which is it hasn't been evaluated against another, so the Vision 2040 document of the county, and then also impact of housing, forestry, and agricultural land uses, which are also either codified or otherwise regulatory. So the finding is just that one may not have been evaluated against the other. How do we language that? Because that tees up the recommendation that there is an evaluation done in this space.
Okay, so I think I can get us there. So third line, it says measures for the landfill. It needs to be a period. No, you had it. You were there. It's measure for the landfill. That's a period because you moved landfill related entities above. So just take out the rest of that. A new sentence. This requirement was not evaluated for consistency with Vision 2040, given time constraints. So that takes care of that. Now let's get.
So I'm curious, Sam. So the acquisition of buffer land is something that has occurred over time. That would not be something that this group was evaluating necessarily. Is it a presently this committee is or subcommittee is not evaluated, or is it that the county is not over time evaluated?
Well, they couldn't have evaluated Vision 2040 back in time because it didn't exist until a year or so ago. Right. So you can put this requirement was not evaluated by this subcommittee for consistency. So it's clarified there. And then I need Jeff. So tell me, has no authority to regulate a private party's acquisition of real estate. So I'm not sure I'm understanding what the fine point you're making there. It can require Republic, DEQ could require Republic to purchase buffer land, could it not?
It could.
Yeah, so that's what it says above. So what, tell me more about this point here.
Well, anybody can buy a piece of property and they can leave it fallow or use it for other purposes, but that does not change the zoning on the property. So the property owner could ultimately sell that property and somebody else could buy it and then put it back to use for the purposes that are provided in the zoning ordinance. So I don't think for that reason that it would implicate Vision 2040 at all, because it does not change the regulatory designation on the property. It does take it out of use for sure, but that doesn't mean it won't be put back to use at some point in the future. And that's true whether it's Republic or Stark or Forests or I mean it's that's the property owner gets to decide how the property is used.
So Jeff, oh, go ahead, Sam.
No, so if that is the point here, it really is the acquisition of buffer land as a condition. Everything you just said is not inconsistent with the finding as currently on the screen.
I'm fine with it as it's been drafted.
Okay, so we don't have to address, we can accept that now.
Right.
Okay.
And just to be clear, we spent some time on the impact or the usage of farm, agricultural, and I forget what the other one was we just had on there. So we are
Forestry.
eliminating that. Are we good in eliminating that? Because that was, so I hear what you're saying, Jeff, and I'm curious if there's a way to get from where we are right here to acknowledging that it seems to me this finding is just acknowledging the fact that having the landfill here and over time, the expansions of landfill have also meant the acquisition of additional buffer lands as it has grown. We have seen additional buffer lands, and that has in fact brought an impact to forest and agricultural and housing land. Is there a way to just acknowledge that in this finding? Because we are, so the Vision 2040, yes, there's a lot of components there and elements there, but I'm not sure that that would lead me to the conclusion of the impacts of otherwise usable land for ag, forestry, and housing, which is a finding, right? The fact is that the landfill is much bigger than it originally was. It has certainly impacted how that land use around it has happened. Is there a way to get that here?
Yes, okay, so after the first sentence, you would, after the word landfill, Valley, whatever it's called, has acquired such buffer lands over the years. That were previously zoned.
No, they're currently zoned.
Oh, currently zoned. Okay, that are currently zoned.
Yeah,
That are currently zoned. Whatever those things are, forest.
residential, rural residential, forestry, and exclusive farms. Forest conservation and exclusive farms.
Okay, and you'll spell
That's right,
those
that's
out.
right.
You'll spell those out, but then that does it. Yeah, the landfill has acquired good.
And then that
So
last
it-
sentence would be is that last sentence doesn't work now.
Right, right.
Yeah, I'd have to move it up.
How about just no evaluation by this subcommittee for consistency with Vision 2040 was
Right.
done, given the time constraints?
But we weren't going to do Vision 2040.
Anyway, right.
And so given time constraints, I think should come out.
I agree.
Say it was not in the scope.
Or
Or just say it wasn't done. We didn't do it.
Just not evaluated by the subcommittee, period.
The other thing is, we don't have any data that land has been acquired. We didn't research records.
Okay, wait, pause, because now this has changed again. So are we not including, so no evaluation by this subcommittee for consistency with Vision 2040?
I think we
Was
should leave the
done.
vision. I think we
I
should
think
leave
so
the
too.
Vision 2040, just end the sentence after Vision 2040.
Right, that's how I was seeing it. Vision 2040 is a major planning endeavor, document, guiding document.
Okay, so I think in fairness for consistency revision 4040, which went into effect in 2000 and X.
I'll see if I can find it. Inga, will you, unless you want to, while you're typing away on other things.
2022.
Just highlighted
21.
yellow for
Yeah, I
now.
think it was 21.
We'll check later.
And to Catherine's previous point, I think this requirement is wrong with the addition of the
Right.
additional sentence should be this situation.
Or you could say the DEQ requirement, but yeah, I think this situation, yeah, this situation.
'Cause I don't
So it
know,
was, sorry, it was adopted June 2019.
All right, we good to go to 17, our friend 17.
that's fine.
This is just grammar in 17.
I'm fine with it.
You need to be more specific of saying in any of the county's conditions of approval.
Right.
Yeah,
And what's
And-
with this do not seem to be
Yeah,
mentioned?
yeah,
I mean,
I was
they-
just gonna say, there's no dancing around this. The odor issues have
Were
never
not
been addressed.
mentioned.
Yeah, have never been addressed in any of the county's conditions of approval. Or were not mentioned, whichever.
Are
Whatever.
not addressed. Okay, that's fine.
Have not been addressed.
Yeah. It's have not, it's past tense.
Been addressed.
The dancing mark is my inability to keep track of everything.
You've done a great job, Ed. I was
Yeah,
just,
give me a break, Ed. You've been
Right,
doing
right.
yeoman
And
work. Yeah.
Yeah,
no.
you damn well better apologize, Ed, for this shoddy job of
Yeah.
obsessive compulsive checking that you've done. What the hell's wrong with you? This is fantastic.
so we've capitalized county in other places. Oh, so we're taking county out of that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Or we can use what the land use conditions of approvals, what we've used prior.
Okay.
That's fine.
The next one is grammar.
Is this true? Like, it's pretty easy to figure out which ones are ongoing. So,
I was trying to think whether or not they should be that should be eliminated, that whole thing. So I was just,
but it does also okay, so it does tie into Inga, when you were trying to explain to us the operational, I might not have even the words right, but I think operational conditions of approval and the preliminary, I think is how that landed.
Mm-hmm.
Is it important to acknowledge that there's a shift in how Benton County is doing its land use conditions of approval now, per Inga's conversation, and that there are, in fact, if you were to categorize past conditions of approval, you generally can land them in one camp or another. So is it important to call that out as a finding? Because first, that's an improvement, I would think, in Benton County's conditions of approval process, but that we did in fact have conversations about, the fact there are many of them that are repeated because they were ongoing, for example, and there were those that were preliminary, and they, you could move forward with operations once those preliminary conditions were met, but that did not mean that the ongoing conditions. Is it just important to educate with this finding? Meaning, I don't think it reflects accurately here, but do we want to capture this change over time?
Well,
Sorry,
you have
Jeff.
a recommendation that says do this, so you should have a finding that sets it up. So it's only a matter of, is that the right words? So there's the companion recommendation.
So we do acknowledge preliminary and operational in that. So if you go back to that finding, and Jeff, were you say, I can't see everybody on the screen. I don't know if I heard, Jeff, you started to say something.
I can't remember what I started to say.
Sorry. So in,
So let me just first clean this up a little bit. So Inga, the second line, it says what conditions must be completed. It should say were to be completed. And I don't know what the hell, and which conditions were to carry, I don't know what this is trying to say, to the ongoing use of the land.
I think it meant which conditions apply to the ongoing use of land.
Okay, yeah.
so I like applied. I'm curious though, if unclear is the right word. So how I feel is that it was important to identify what conditions, or it was not identified clearly. It wasn't that it was unclear, it was just not specified. Maybe that's a better word. It was not specified what conditions were.
Yeah, I think
No, it's not that you're getting into a finding, Inga, with the word important. In reviewing
just-
historical findings, it was not clearly specified what conditions were to be.
Sorry, what?
So go up to where you have important to specify
Mhm.
and say it was unclear. No, in reviewing historical files, it was not clear what conditions, and then you finish the sentence you have there.
So nope, not clear. Not
was not-
specified, not specified.
It was not clearly specified.
well, or actually it might be. No, I'm not going to continue to wordsmith this. I have
Well, so there's a
dinner
big
just
difference.
arriving in about another 10 minutes.
Right. So there's a big difference between it wasn't clear, which it generally was clear, and it wasn't designated or specified or.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think our review of the historical files, we did not find any that had the new operating conditions that Benton County is operating or working with, designating preliminary and operating conditions of approval. Because all of them were too old. That's a more recent development.
Would it be important to state as a matter of finding here also that the current,
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not at the moment. I think it gets into it down below in the recommendation where it talks about preliminary and ongoing.
it does not acknowledge it in either space, though, that is a new procedural practice of the conditions, which is the only reason I mentioned it, is we've clearly shifted to a different type of conditions of approval when it's land use.
Well, we're about to do that. There's a recommendation that you do that.
I thought Inga said we were already doing that. Is that not the case?
They are already
Okay.
doing it. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Well, then that just, okay.
And the county just gets to say, oh, they recommended it. We've already got it done.
We've already got it done. Yeah, I think it's fine the way it is, but again, remember you can wordsmith this. How many recommendations do we have here? Just to get a sense of our agenda. Okay.
16.
Was our meeting supposed to be over at 5, or did you guys
Yeah.
decide in advance that you're?
We did
'Cause
not.
I've been
We
on the
didn't-
road for 6 hours in snowstorms, and I'm ready for a drink.
Okay, we can drink and stay on this call
You
as
can.
well.
No, that would not be enjoyable. I mean, I love you guys and everything, but I would rather.
Drink.
Well,
No,
see,
I literally do have a dinner guest arriving here very shortly, so I'm.
Yes.
okay, so what is the specific plan? So I guess really, to move this along, because we've got to nail this by, this week, so that next week in the subcommittee review, we have time to see the context and the other work. Is it, who made these green changes here? Is this an ed work product from today?
Yes.
Okay, so is there a way to, Inga, just to send out the recommendation? Well, I mean, send out everything, but have you guys just change your suggestions on the recommendations? What I will do, only with your permission, is then I will do my best. I'll preserve all those track changes, but I'll do my best job, or Inga and I will do our best job of reconciling them for you to see. Because we just have got to get these done by Friday. You know, preferably by Thursday, so they can then be incorporated into the stuff that has more context to it. And that will take its own all-day meeting. And I think these meetings need to be longer next time, Inga. They need to be longer so Mark can suffer more, which is my sole purpose for living.
Don't make these longer before I get Republic to raise my rates.
Okay, well, just tell us when that
Me
happens.
too. Me too. Raise my rate.
Okay, we'll double your rate, Mark.
Yeah, okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
So what can we send these to, can Inga send these to you? Have Jeff, Catherine, and Mark change these things and get them to me by close of business on Wednesday, so then I can then do my best with Inga to reconcile them and then give it to you for final approval, which could maybe be done over email if they're easy, or first thing next Monday when we meet.
So Jeff, are you going to have a chance to look at these? So here's the space where we end up going back and forth with track changes, 6 different versions, and I don't want to do that. That is not time that I can afford to this process.
I will I'll make a commitment to review. If Inga sends me out the current version, I will make a commitment to review Ed's changes and then send that out to everybody else. And then maybe that would be the fastest way to do it.
And the three of you.
By when? When do you think you can do that, Jeff?
I will make that. I will do that tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds fine. If we can get that, then I can look at it, and I assume Catherine can look at it. You know, if I have some major heartburn or something, I can touch base with Catherine, so that we're not, you know, going back and forth.
Pre or post drink, just
Maybe it would be faster if we all had drink.
Yeah, maybe.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the plan,
that.
Stan.
Okay,
Thank you much.
thanks.
thanks
All right.
everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
Night.
Night.
Enjoy.
Okay.